Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, into my show, The Juice Alert. If you have not subscribed to The Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can find The Juice Alert on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms that includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. If you're watching here on YouTube and you enjoy the content, be sure to leave this show a like, comment your opinions and thoughts, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you agree with, what you disagree with. And if you're listening on podcasting networks, be sure to leave it a good rating and review if you enjoy this content, of course. And also, if your family and friends are not hip to this show, be sure to share it with all your family and friends so you can spread the joy that is my show, of course, The Juice Alert. Mainly NFL topics we're covering today. We're going to talk about the New York Giants. We're going to talk about the Houston Texans. We're going to talk about the Miami Dolphins. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Breaking news, Deshaun Watson pretty much out for the season due to having surgery. But before I do get started, I just want to also say follow me on social media. If you have not followed me on social media already, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter /X, and TikTok as well. I'm on all those platforms. If you want to take some time to pause this episode and screenshot these handles on your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to do that. All the links to my social media platforms are in the description of this episode. So yes, be sure to follow me on social media. Would love to connect with you guys on a much deeper note via social media and chat with you guys and debate. And, we'll see where it goes. But without further ado, I want to kick off the show by talking about the New York Football Giants. It's pretty clear to me that Daniel Jones' NFL career as a starting quarterback, it's very quickly coming to an end. I think that in about 2 years or so, Daniel Jones is going to be remoted to being a backup quarterback in the NFL if he's not already out of a job. I don't believe in Daniel Jones all that much. I think it's devastating due to the fact that he suffered a season-ending injury. But let's be real, people. Daniel Jones, before he got injured, really was never a great quarterback, not even close to it. I would say he was average at best. I mean, this year, and we were in year number 5, people, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, looked like one of the worst starting quarterbacks in the NFL. A lot of people were trying to argue saying, oh, Daniel Jones, he needs more time. It's year number 5, people, and if the cookies are still baking by year number 5, I think you need to get a different recipe. I think you need to scratch these ingredients and just start all over, clean out the kitchen, because this is not going to be the lean cuisine you thought it would be. And you looked at Daniel Jones and the Giants last year, and yes, they made the playoffs. Yes, they won a playoff game. They had a good moment. They were a good story for about a year. But there's been a lot of teams and a lot of players that have had one great moment, one great storyline within a year. Heck, people, Marcus Mariota won a playoff game at one point. Is Marcus Mariota a dynamic quarterback? No, he's a backup. We all know this, okay? The question was, could Daniel Jones follow up his success with even more success? And in the small sample size we got this season, he failed miserably. He just flatly failed miserably. And I can make the argument Daniel Jones is the worst starting quarterback in the National Football League because right now, he's not even the best quarterback on his own roster. Tyrod Taylor is a better decision maker. He's a better thrower of the football. He's flatly more talented, and he's a better overall leader because I think that the Giants recognize he's a veteran and he's played a long time, has some success in the NFL, kind of bounced around a little bit, I will admit. But Brian Daboll trusts Tyrod Taylor to make high-level throws much more than Daniel Jones. You see it in the play calling. It seems like every time Brian Daboll is coaching Daniel Jones, he's giving him a pacifier. He's holding his hand. It's like, Daniel Jones, just don't make mistakes. Let's rein it in. You can't throw the ball down the field because we know you're going to turn the ball over. It's going to lead to a disaster, and you're going to make mistakes, and it's just a mess. Daniel Jones is a limited football player, and it's glaringly obvious. We saw it at Duke. The Giants, to me, were one of the only few teams that have fallen in love with Daniel Jones. I don't buy into the Broncos rumors, the Washington rumors. Maybe they were going to fall in love with Daniel Jones if he was there on draft night. But regardless, knowing what we know about Daniel Jones, I'm pretty sure those teams would gladly not draft him if they would have known what he potentially would have turned out to become. And look, when I say Daniel Jones is the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, it's not a troll job. I flatly believe right now, if you were to look at starting quarterbacks across the landscape of the NFL, if you were to put them all in a draft and say, okay, who's going to go in order, Daniel Jones probably would be the last pick of that draft if you are looking at long-term success, because he's already been injured. And even guys like Bryce Young is not even out of year number one, people. There's reason to believe Bryce Young could get significantly better. He was a better player in college than Daniel Jones. I don't take any pleasure in saying Daniel Jones isn't very good, but I'm watching the film, I'm watching the results, and like I said, on draft night, I think the Giants were one of the only few teams that fell in love with Daniel Jones. Everyone said it was a mistake drafting Daniel Jones, and it's been a disaster. And the Giants have put themselves in this position to the point where I don't quite feel that sorry for them, because smart football people knew giving Daniel Jones a long-term contract that was worth a crap ton of money was flatly a mistake. You mean after one solid season where Daniel Jones finally isn't turning the ball over, is finally at least somewhat looking competent, you're going to pay him? Let's see him improve off of that. Let's see him build off of that, before we start, pinning down the money. I mean, he still had a lot to prove, in my opinion. Just because you have one great moment or one great year or one great season, that doesn't automatically mean I'm going to pay you. Why would I do that? I mean, Jameis Winston has flashed a couple of years, back when he was in Tampa Bay. He's flashed in moments at times. Are we going to pay Jameis Winston just because he's flashed a couple of times? Are we going to pay Marcus Mariota a ton of money because he somehow won a playoff game a long time ago? No, we know we're not going to do that because the player does not warrant that contract. And the Giants, they have put themselves in this position. And you look at Daniel Jones, I say his NFL career is slowly but surely probably going to be over very soon, because we all know that Daniel Jones wasn't great to begin with, and now you're dealing with a major injury. I think Daniel Jones' back is against the wall, and I don't think he's getting up. I think that this injury pretty much saddles the guy as potentially a long-term backup, and I don't think the Giants are going to be interested in him long-term anymore. I think that they've recognized that they were kind of premature to pay him. They jumped on the gun way too early. And I think the Giants, if they're in position to draft a star quarterback, they're going to probably do it. I mean, if Caleb Williams is available on the board, are the Giants really choosing Daniel Jones over Caleb Williams? They would be flatly delusional, because at worst, is Caleb Williams going to be a little bit better than Daniel Jones? I believe so. So I think Daniel Jones, it's a sad story, because I don't think Daniel Jones was ever going to be put in a position to succeed with the Giants, just flatly because the expectations were way too high. This is a guy that I don't think had the ice in his veins. I don't think that he was ever going to be that big-time quarterback the Giants were hoping he was going to be. The expectations were sky high, and the situation has been flatly awful. They've not built a good situation around Daniel Jones, and we know Daniel Jones needs a lot around him to succeed, and it's just a mess. And I think the Giants, you got to pull the trigger and, potentially move off of this. Now, what is the market for Daniel Jones right now? I don't think the market is very, very big at all. I mean, is Atlanta going to take a chance on him? Are the Patriots maybe going to take a chance on him? I don't think he's a Patriots-type quarterback. I don't think he would provide any more juice for the Falcons' offense. I really don't. I think that he's a limited player with limited upside and now coming off a major injury. So, unfortunately for Daniel Jones, I kind of feel bad for the guy, but good for him that he got paid, because boy, oh boy, if he hadn't got that big-time contract, man, he would have, been out of a couple millions of dollars for years to come. But he's set for life probably financially, so good for him, good for his agent. But in terms of being on the football field, Daniel Jones is not the type of quarterback you want. Now, coming off a major injury, I don't see much light in the tunnel for the guy. When you look at the New York Football Giants, boy, oh boy, they're a bad watch. They really are. They're not a great football team. I could argue right now, if I were to choose, okay, which NFL team am I going to watch play football today? The Giants would be at the bottom of that list, because there's been some games where these games aren't even competitive. Did you see that Cowboys game of recent? Wasn't even close. It was an embarrassment. They should not be on national TV right now in America's Game of the Week. The Giants, get them up on television screen, because it's a bad product to watch. This is not a great football team. The offense is awful. Brian Dable, who I had high expectations for, and I still think that he has a chance to be a really good NFL head coach. He seems to have regressed a little bit. The team just is flatly not very good. They do have some decent pieces on defense. Like Dexter Lawrence is a real big-time football player, maybe arguably the best defensive tackle in the sport. He's anchoring that defense. The Giants' defense has some good pieces. Like I said, they're not awful, but the Giants' defense is not capable of carrying arguably the worst offense in the NFL and one of the worst offenses I've ever seen. I understand this team's dealt with injuries, but man, at some point, do you have any quality depth? If guys get hurt, guys have got to step up, and guys have not stepped up. So let me just say right now, when it comes to Caleb Williams, everyone's talking about him. He's this big-time quarterback prospect out of USC. USC quarterbacks haven't really panned out that well in the NFL. You look at Sam Darnold, had a lot of high expectations. He kind of fell flat on his face in the NFL. He's a backup quarterback. You look at Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer had a solid career, but I don't think anything crazy to write home about. But Caleb Williams, he seems like he's the real deal. And I don't like to scout players based on the helmet. I scout players based on what I see on tape. And what I see on tape is Caleb Williams is dynamic. He's awesome. And there are multiple NFL teams that potentially should be tanking for Caleb Williams. I think the Patriots are a team that really should be tanking for him. They kind of need to throw in the towel, but I'm just going to stick to the Giants because I just talked about them. The Giants need to do everything they can to tank for Caleb Williams because this is a franchise that is in a big-time market that is getting outshadowed by the B team. Yes, the New York Jets are getting more talked about, are getting more buzz and more praise than the New York Giants. And that's probably going to be the case until Aaron Rodgers leaves town. Aaron Rodgers is this big megastar, draws a lot of attention, and when he's on the football field, Aaron Rodgers is a bad man. Boy, oh boy, does he throw a pretty football. But the Giants are in desperate need of a star quarterback. And several years ago, there was rumors that the Giants coaching staff kind of wanted to draft Patrick Mahomes, but ownership came in and said, we don't want to do that. And then they end up drafting Daniel Jones a couple of years ago. That has not worked out pretty much at all. He won a playoff game last year, but again, Marcus Mariota won a playoff game a couple of years ago, and everyone knew that he was not the savior for the Tennessee Titans at quarterback. People were thinking, the Giants are going to get Justin Herbert, but Justin Herbert comes back to Oregon for another year, and then they try to talk themselves into Daniel Jones. I feel like they panicked. They need to draft Daniel Jones, but this is as obvious of a pick as you can get. If Caleb Williams is there with the first overall pick for the Giants and they're bad enough to tank for him, they need to go for it. This would be a guy that would provide instant juice for this franchise. And look, if you don't have the quarterback right, you're thrown into quicksand. It pulls your entire team, your entire franchise, your entire coaching staff down. But if you get the right quarterback, look at CJ Stroud in Houston. Houston did not have high expectations this year. But CJ Stroud, he just finds ways to make things work. He's a special quarterback, at least up to this point, a special thrower of the football. He just seems to make everything work. You look at Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow came into Cincinnati, instantly elevated that franchise. Caleb Williams has the talent to be that type of quarterback. Now, I will say, just because you get Caleb Williams, that doesn't guarantee a bunch of wins because the Giants' situation is not great overall. So they would need to continue to build this thing from the ground up. But Caleb Williams will be a heck of a starting point because he's a problem solver. He elevates your coaching staff. He elevates your wide receivers. He can elevate your franchise because this is a guy that's going to come in and just be a playmaker. I see the arm. I see the mobility, the ability to process information very quickly, make decisions on the fly, and just go out there and be a baller, man. And in that division with Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and the Cowboys defense, Washington maybe has something in Sam Howell. We'll see. The Giants are in desperate need of Caleb Williams, who is the type of quarterback that could only come around once every so often. It's very, very rare you see a prospect that has as much potential as Caleb Williams. And again, he has to go out there and prove it on the football field. I'm not proclaiming Caleb Williams is automatically going to be a Hall of Famer, going to be an automatic Pro Bowler, but he is at least worth the risk. You owe it to this fan base, you owe it to this franchise to upgraded quarterback. Daniel Jones, that is not New York Giants style of football. That is backup quarterback style of football. Got to get him out of there. And I think the Giants, they would serve themselves right if they tanked for Caleb Williams. When you look at CJ Stroud, boy, oh boy, has he exceeded expectations. And that's saying a lot coming from me because I felt CJ Stroud was the real deal when I was scouting him at Ohio State. I felt this guy had all the talent in the world to be a really good NFL starting quarterback. I said coming into the draft that he was a much more bigger, faster, and better version of what Matt Ryan is. And I think that that's definitely translated to the NFL. Matt Ryan, when he was at his best, was an NFL MVP that nearly won a Super Bowl. And I can argue CJ Stroud is flatly better than Matt Ryan already as a rookie. You know, and that's saying a lot because Matt Ryan's going to get Hall of Fame votes. CJ Stroud has exceeded all expectations, including the Houston Texans' expectations. Because, look, I was very high on him, but I did not flatly expect CJ Stroud to come into a situation inheriting a 3-win team from a year ago and play like an elite quarterback. Name me 5 quarterbacks in the NFL right now playing at a higher level than CJ Stroud. You can't flatly name him because CJ Stroud has been a top 5 quarterback this season. You can make the argument he deserves a first-team All-Pro nod. He's in the MVP conversation. Right now, to this point, CJ Stroud has a 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. That's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady level numbers. I'm talking about Aaron Rodgers in his prime, winning MVPs. Tom Brady, same thing. These numbers are incredible. And you look at the traits that CJ Stroud has. He is already easily one of the most pinpoint accurate throwers of the football in the entire National Football League. And this is a guy that's throwing the football down the field. He is fearless in that pocket. He can make every single throw. He throws a beautiful football. It's very, very catchable. And it just seems like everyone seems to be waiting on the week where, CJ Stroud's going to hit a wall. He's going to struggle. He can't figure this defense out. And CJ Stroud, boom, 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 he just continues to overcome, elevate under pressure, and elevate this Texans team. This Texans team could very well make it into the playoffs. We'll see if it actually happens, but, I mean, they're about 2/3 of the way there. I mean, they've already got 5 wins, and there was reason to believe CJ Stroud could struggle this year because, again, we believe in the player usually, but do we believe in the situation? You know, is the coaching staff good enough? Is the weapons good enough? Is the offensive line good enough? And look, it has not been all perfect for the Texans this year. They've had injuries to the offensive line, the wide receiver core, but CJ Stroud just finds ways to continue to make things work. It does not matter about the offensive line. It doesn't matter that DeMeco Ryans is a rookie head coach that specializes in defense. CJ Stroud is that type of leader and that type of quarterback where he's going to figure the offense out. He's a smart kid. And when you look at CJ Stroud, the reason why I throw out these MVP conversations is flatly because in terms of value, there's not many quarterbacks that are more valuable to their football team than CJ Stroud. A guy like Jalen Hurts might be performing at a high level, but in terms of value to that football team, of course, Jalen Hurts provides value. But you look at the receivers, the running backs, the defense, the coaching staff, the offensive line, a lot of quarterbacks could find some decent success in Jalen Hurts' situation. So how valuable is Jalen Hurts if you can potentially replace him with decent quarterback play? I'm not sure if you put every quarterback in the Texans situation, they will be succeeding the way CJ Stroud is succeeding. He is legitimately elevating this team, elevating this franchise, and we've got a new great star quarterback on our hands, people. CJ Stroud is the real deal. To me, already easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and I think he has a chance to have a legendary NFL career if he continues to improve, and we'll see where this goes. I mean, CJ Stroud is yet to kind of hit that rookie wall, yet to really struggle. We'll see if that happens eventually, but I don't think that there's any situation where CJ Stroud can't figure things out if he has decent support around him and if he stays healthy and humble and ready to go. I want to talk about the Miami Dolphins because I'm a huge fan of the way the Miami Dolphins have built their football team. They are all about getting dynamic star players around their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. And I will say, let me just give Tua Tagovailoa a little bit of his flowers because I had some doubts about Tua. I didn't think the upside was all that great. You know, the injury history at Alabama concerned me. I didn't necessarily say Tua will be a bust, but I don't know. I just wasn't a guy that was willing to put all my eggs in the Tua Tagovailoa basket until I saw him, really kind of prove me wrong. And I think Tua is doing a pretty good job as the Dolphins quarterback. He's been, kind of what they hoped he would be. An accurate thrower of the football, a very good leader that has operated at a high level within the system. And you can't really ask for much more from your quarterback than what Tua has provided them. He's won games, he's been accurate, been a good decision maker, been a good leader, and it seems like the franchise is behind him, at least for now. I mean, when Tua is going right, he's one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. Not to mention Tyreek Hill, best wide receiver in the entire NFL. That was a groundbreaking trade, and what do you know? If you build around a young quarterback, they're going to succeed. So many NFL teams just fail to put weapons around their quarterback, and they wonder, why is this quarterback not succeeding? Hello? Do you see who he's throwing to? Do you see that offensive line? Get a clue, people. But congratulations to the Dolphins. They have done an excellent job of building a potential Super Bowl caliber roster around Tua Tagovailoa. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, they've added stars to their defense. And listen, let me tell you something right now. I was wrong about Mike McDaniel. I thought that guy was going to be a doink, going to be a flop as an NFL head coach. He's been the exact opposite. He's an excellent head coach. He's one of the best offensive minds in the sport. I will say, though, the Miami Dolphins are a young football team, and they will need to eventually get over that hump and really, truly figure out how to win big games, because we've seen them this year versus, teams above 500, and it hasn't looked all that great. In fact, over the past 2 years, the Dolphins' record versus teams above 500 is abysmal. They don't beat good teams. Now, of course, you can only play teams that are on your schedule, but I don't know, man. In terms of trusting Miami to win a Super Bowl, I think they're a couple of years away. And that may be disappointing to Miami Dolphins fans, but that's my job right here. I have to be honest. And as good as Miami has done constructing a roster, they're a very young team, and the Miami Dolphins style of play does not automatically suggest Super Bowl wins. Because let's look at some great teams from sports in the past. The Bill Belichick and Tom Brady led Patriots. They weren't all that flashy. They didn't have these type of weapons that the Dolphins had, but you know what they had? They had grit. They had determination. They had physicality. They played defense. They were great on special teams. They were not a flashy football team. They were a hard-nosed, tough football team that will punch you in the mouth. You look at other sports, look at basketball. Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls, they were flashy. They were high-flying at times because of Michael, but they were one of the best defensive teams of modern NBA history. A hard-nosed defensive team that was not afraid to get punched in the mouth, and if they did get punched in the mouth, they would punch back even harder. You look at the Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry Golden State Warriors, as dynamic as they were offensively, there was a level of toughness to that team. They bought in on defense. They were an elite defensive unit. That's what made them such unstoppable forces and an unstoppable team. See, the Miami Dolphins are that flashy Ferrari on the freeway. But if you get that Ferrari on some black ice or some snow, it's going to be slipping and sliding a little bit, people. Those tires aren't necessarily meant to overcome the Rocky Mountains. I'm just saying, people. Football is, at the root, a meat and potatoes sport that leans into physicality. And you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they check that box, the physicality box. Last year, they were among the league leaders in sacks. The Baltimore Ravens, physical football team. 49ers, physical football team that will bully you. The Philadelphia Eagles, we know about their hard-nosed toughness. The Miami Dolphins style doesn't suggest Super Bowls. They're an outdoor, warm weather team, and when things are perfect for them, they're going to win most of those track races. But in the playoffs, when teams have equally as talented rosters or just as good of coaching staffs where they can make adjustments and they play a physical brand of football, is Miami going to be in a little bit of trouble? I worry about them a little bit because when things are perfect for Tua, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the game, but when things break down, Tua is asked to make plays off script. Tua Tagovailoa at times can struggle, and it's about overcoming come playoff time. You look at Patrick Mahomes last year, a bunch of injuries to the wide receiver core. It didn't matter. Patrick Mahomes was going to make the mailman from across the street look good because Patrick Mahomes, he's a guy that can elevate players when things aren't going so well. You look at Joe Burrow, a couple of years ago, sacked so many times. I think he was sacked over 70 times within the season, just kept getting back up and eventually got the Bengals all the way to a Super Bowl. Obviously, they didn't win the Super Bowl because there's a ceiling to a team with a bad offensive line, but Joe Burrow's the type of quarterback that can overcome, maybe not having the best wide receiver core, a bad offensive line. Can Tua Tagovailoa overcome some things if Mike McDaniel doesn't have all the adjustments right in front of him? It remains to be seen. And you even look at a team like the 49ers several years ago, super duper talented. They just dominated their way to a Super Bowl. It looked like they were going to dominate the Kansas City Chiefs, but the minute Patrick Mahomes got momentum, they could not stop him. And Jimmy Garoppolo fell apart because Jimmy Garoppolo was a limited game-managing quarterback that was being masked by a very good roster. And we have to find out, is Tua, closer to Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, or is he closer to the likes of Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo? Because if he's closer to Jared Goff and Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm sorry to tell you, Miami Dolphins fans, but that may not be good enough. Flatly. Especially if Miami is as inconsistent as they are on the defensive side of the football. So I'm willing to see how this Miami Dolphins experiment pans out, but until I see the Miami Dolphins play a more physical brand of football and really truly get over that hump, I can't believe that they're a true Super Bowl contender. I think that they're fun to watch and they're flashy, and we'll see. Maybe this style of football can eventually win a Super Bowl. I could be totally wrong, but only time will tell, and that's my thoughts on Tua and the Dolphins, and we'll see what they do going forward and how their team will be constructed, down the road. When it comes to Deshaun Watson, boy, oh boy, I feel bad for the guy because it seems like a lot of people were being unfair to Deshaun Watson. I understand that he got paid a crap ton of money. I understand that there's a lot of off-the-field issues that have led to the guy being hated by a lot of people in the NFL, but Deshaun Watson is a human being, just like you and me, and I think Deshaun Watson flatly does care about his image and flatly does care about winning football games, and the Deshaun Watson era for the Cleveland Browns has gotten off to a very, very slow start. And look, I kept telling people that Deshaun Watson, there's reason to believe that he's going to get things right because Deshaun Watson was away from football due to off-the-field issues. It's not like he's suffered a major injury. It's not like he's an aging player. He's still well within his prime. I mean, he's 28 years old. So there's reason to believe that Deshaun Watson, he was just super, super rusty, needed time to get chemistry with the wide receivers, needed time to get the rust off his belt. And we saw even this past week versus Baltimore, on the road, hostile environment, overcoming adversity. Deshaun Watson was excellent in that second half. Outplayed Lamar Jackson on the road. Looked like the Houston Deshaun Watson that Cleveland thought they were getting. I didn't think that there was any reason to believe Deshaun Watson couldn't get back to his old self because, like I said, he just seemed like he was rusty. But now Deshaun Watson, dealing with a shoulder injury, out for the season, you have to wonder at this point, is Deshaun Watson ever going to be the same quarterback? You have to wonder because there was reason to believe, okay, once he gets the rust off, he starts to look the part. And I think we kind of saw that of recent, versus Baltimore, where Deshaun Watson in that second half looked amazing. But now Deshaun Watson has to overcome a season-ending injury. And he's yet to play a full season in quite some time. He's missed a lot of time. Now he's banged up. His body's failing him, and he's not getting any younger. So when it comes to this Deshaun Watson saga, I kind of feel bad for the guy because this is a guy that in Houston had the world in front of him, was playing at an all-time great level, and it seemed like he was going to be a lock for multiple Pro Bowls going forward, maybe could challenge to win a Super Bowl, and boom, Deshaun Watson goes to Cleveland. There's great wide receivers around him, a good coaching staff. It doesn't seem like he has to carry the team, but now Deshaun Watson's body's failing him. It seems like the expectations have kind of gotten to him, and now he's dealing with a season-ending injury. It really, truly is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. I mean, so the question now remains, can Deshaun Watson overcome adversity? Is he ever going to be the same player he once was in Houston? Or another better question is, can some version of Deshaun Watson still revert to a winning player? Because even me, I have to admit, Deshaun Watson was not all that impressive in a Cleveland Browns uniform the last couple of times we saw him. We saw some flashes, we saw some good throws here and there, but he was not close to the Houston Deshaun Watson. There was reason to believe there's logic as to why that happened, but the bottom line is if Deshaun Watson cannot make at least one deep playoff run for the Cleveland Browns, there's going to be some repercussions for that organization because they bet on Deshaun Watson and took a risk on him, and I was behind the risk, but now he's injured. And we don't know what type of quarterback we're going to get going forward with him coming off a major injury. So I'm hoping Deshaun Watson can find his footing again because he was a darn special football player when he was going right at Houston. I mean, let's not forget, people, Deshaun Watson had a huge lead on Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs back in, I believe, 2019, 2018. Yeah, 2019, 2018. It wasn't too long ago. Deshaun Watson was one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL and seemed like he had the world in front of him. But now, major setback and major expectations are on Deshaun Watson's shoulders. I will say, though, if Deshaun Watson can overcome this type of adversity and deliver a ton of success for Cleveland or maybe win them a Super Bowl, he will be forever cemented in NFL history. So there's a lot for Deshaun Watson to gain going forward once he comes back. And he's going to have to overcome a lot because he's getting paid a ton of money. The roster eventually may not be as good as it is right now because they're paying him a lot of money. But there's a lot for Deshaun Watson to also lose. His reputation's on the line. And flatly, I think that a lot of people are going to realize that he's just never probably going to be the same football player if he continues to struggle. But there's a lot for Deshaun Watson to gain. Like I said, there's also a lot for him to lose going forward. So, look, I'm hoping and praying Deshaun Watson can come back and be somewhat of the same version of the quarterback that he was in Houston that everyone fell in love with. But a lot is on the line for Deshaun Watson. There's a lot for him to overcome. We'll see if he can do it. I believe in him, but only time will tell if he can get the job done. Well, folks, that's pretty much all I have today. Thank you so much for tuning in today. My name is Jamon McKinney. Have a God bless day. Stay safe. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this content with all your friends and family if you enjoyed. Until next time.